we were trying to decide how the seating should fit. Yeah, please. So it didn't look super weird, but hopefully we've accomplished something. So hopefully everyone's having a good time. It's been worth it getting up early and getting through the line and getting in here. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about agentic infrastructure and the platforms that are going to be required to actually drive this major advancement in AI and how regular people hopefully use AI. And how it transforms businesses. A little bit of context, it got referenced earlier in the day. We had our GPT moment where chat was the primary way to interface. So you had a request, you had a response, relatively short context, short burst interactions. Agents are obviously running at machine speed. They're running sometimes for hours. You've got 12 of them running code overnight for you with massive tool volume and token prefill. If anyone has set up an agent to run overnight and then awoken to discover that they have auto-refilled their favorite token provider, raise your hand. Probably everybody, exactly. Don't tell my wife that, Bill. So I'm going to ask a question for each of the panelists here, rapid fire. In one sentence, what's the single biggest failure point in infrastructure when it comes to workloads for agents today? What are we worried about the most? Jump in.
Oh, are we going in order? No?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. I think the answer actually lies in the question itself. Because just think about what happens if we deploy an agent speed, machine speed traffic onto a road that was designed by a human driver. The thing that break first are like road capacity, traffic light, and speed limit. I guess the opportunity there is how to turn those choke points into a checkpoint.
Got it. John?
Yeah, I think, like I was talking about, it's this interaction of this this LLM, which is, they're surprisingly reliable, but they also do surprising things to us, and they also can act in unpredictable ways. And so I think the big opportunity is to surround them with rule-based policy enforcement, more deterministic systems, more deterministic memory systems, and all these things that can kind of surround this probabilistic thing, but give you more confidence and certainty in what it's actually doing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it keeps on changing and it keeps on evolving as well. So if you look at the compute level, you need to extract optimization, like basically remove as many bubbles as possible as part of the compute, which is there, so that you can offer maximum efficiency. If you look at the infrastructure layer in terms of like routing, etc., and so on, right? There are requests which are coming from all over the world. How do you route them, like smoothen out the spikes which are there so that your compute could be used efficiently with low latency? Voice is becoming a very interesting engagement medium as well, which has a different profile compared to raw text. So how do you manage that heterogeneity of use cases as well as the compute environment which is there? On top of that, you have requirements like sovereignty, which is becoming a lot more important as we go along. And how do you manage that? Because that, in a way, breaks down this common cloud compute philosophy which is there, and also adds a lot of engineering complexity. So I would say it's across the board. And then, as you mentioned, like identity, security, etc., like these are becoming very, very big problems very, very quickly for us. And how do we go and solve them?
In the interest of time, and since you said a couple sentences, my answer is all of it as well. Like it really is. It's going to be a systems problem from the very top of the stack to the guardrails, to the infrastructure, the power, the chips that are running it, and you have to get it all right because there's so much potential for what agents can do. But if we don't make it efficient, we can only get a portion of what we can get done.
And I guess, Peter, to follow up to that question, of that stack right now, what are you most worried about? What is the biggest rock to move in the stack? Besides everything?
I'm an optimist, so I don't worry. I look for opportunity, and I see opportunity at like every level. Like there's
someone here is going to go build something right now, and they're inspired by these conversations. Where do you point them?
Yeah, I mean, you've heard about 16 problems, and there's 100 constraints. Like pick one, go deep, and find a solution. Like have fun.
Maybe build a memory manufacturing plant tomorrow afternoon.
That takes a little while.
Absolutely. Yeah. John, we've obviously been living off the world of GPUs mostly from you guys. Thank you. Agent workloads are a little different than some of the historical LLM workloads we've run. How are you guys thinking about specializing hardware? Do we think the chipsets that have come out recently are going to be optimized already for agentic, or is this going to be, are we going to look for a set of chipsets, whether they're running for local AI or in cloud? How are you guys looking at agentic workloads differently than LLMs, if possible?
Yeah, I mean, they change things in a few ways. One is you have a lot more context, typically with agents. And the pattern of how much of that context is cacheable versus not changes. The other thing is just, again, the heterogeneity. You have agents are LLMs surrounded by computer stuff, right? And a lot of that computer stuff runs on CPUs. It might run on multi-core CPUs. A lot of it also runs on GPUs.
Yep.
But there may be GPUs that are configured more for different kinds of workloads because they're not neural network inference, but they might be run a physics simulation. So I think the data center that's running an agentic workload is very heterogeneous and complicated and has many different processing elements and many layers of storage and complicated network topologies. And frankly, a lot of this, I think the world still doesn't quite know what's the best way to do it, just because agentic AI is still evolving. And then layered on top of all of this, you have these security requirements, security, privacy, and sovereignty. So I think agentic AI, this kind of has happened over and over in the history of AI, that we think we understand it, and then a new thing shows up, and suddenly the workloads look totally different and get more complicated. And I think it's just one more step in that trend. Agentic AI workloads are significantly more complicated, heterogeneous, and expensive computationally than anything we've ever seen before.
Awesome, thank you. Saurabh, enterprises need workflow-specific agents. We are seeing a big trend right now of company in a box to go, have a set of agents that go run your business. All of this requires some degree of fine-tuning, and I'm curious, is the answer or some degree of training, is the answer fine-tuning, custom post-training, context engineering, all of the above, and who owns that, do you think?
Yeah, so if you look into customization, like model customization, there are many companies which say that they have unique data, and so they want the model to be perturbed in a particular direction based on that data. On the Gemini Enterprise Agent platform, we provide capabilities like LoRa training, which is there. That's the easiest one and the simplest one which is there. I would say the simplest one is context engineering. You should just try with that. The base LLMs themselves have enough reasoning power, Gemini as well as other models, that they can reason on top of the context which is provided with the long context window that was earlier mentioned. Like you can actually, you can put in a lot of data on which the models can reason, and also they can focus on different aspects. So the quality of reasoning as part of the context has improved. So that is one, I would say. Second one would be, if you want to really perturb the model, we should start with LoRa-based fine-tuning, which is pretty cheap, pretty easy from an inference perspective, as well as very efficient and cost-effective. On top of that, we have things like full fine-tuning or some level of like post-training. Here we are perturbing all the weights of the model. That changes the inference dynamics because you effectively have a brand new copy of the model, and so it becomes a lot more expensive. And in certain cases, with some very special partners, we do some very custom things as well. But I would say the first two would be the
primary. Awesome. Let's talk, John, about observability for a second. Does experiment tracking, do you think, live inside the infrastructure or in a separate observability layer? What are you seeing customers use for observability for agentic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the way I see this is it's definitely part of an infrastructure. However, it's slightly different from what like the environment that people used to train RL. The environment is where the agent acts and learns, and the experiment tracker is almost like the memory and the measurement plan sit beside it. The way I see this is the environment is where you train your first brain. The learning goes into the model ways, it's compressed, it's internalized, it's capacity bounded. The experiment tracker gives you the second brain, where the learning goes into artifacts, it's unbounded. I guess there's a path to connect your second brain into your first brain, where you turn your system record into your data set, then you can do fine tune, you can do all policy RL, etc. But in terms of where it should be hosted, it's really up to you on your data containment policy. If it's like highly demanded, you need to host on your own infrastructure. If that's not a concern, you can use managed service. But if you want to use it for training, for fine tuning, you should be close enough to your training.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to pivot the conversation. We've had an interesting sort of technical eddy here, but I want to pivot more to the value accrual business side of all of this, because at some point, the venture community will want you to have positive margins and maybe even be profitable. And when we talk about the agentic harness, I think there's an interesting connection there. We're sitting between the model and obviously the outcome from the agent. You've got things like orchestration, sandboxing, runtime, memory, identity, evals, all the things. So my question to anyone who'd like to take it, or two folks who want to take it, is where is their margin durability? Like, where are we going to monetize this thing? If I'm going to go solve a problem right now and it's greenfield, should I go after memory? Should I go after sandbox? Where do you think we're actually going to be able to make money in the agentic stack?
I mean, I can.
I promise no trick questions, and I feel like I lied to you guys.
At the hardware.
At the hardware, yeah.
So I would say if you look into AI, like why it has gotten adoption is because of the quality of results, right, or the quality of experience. As a developer or as a builder, look at the entire stack. The business opportunity is obviously massive, given all the investments, et cetera, which is happening. I think Peter was alluding to it, like there are tons of problems. Pick one and solve it very, very deeply. If you have the quality or the promise to the customer delivered at high enough quality, I think the value will be extracted over there, right? Whether it be on the memory side, so it's not about just working on memory, but do you have a compelling experience for the customers so that they can leverage the memory and be able to deliver what it is supposed to do beyond just, oh, I'm using memory and here is some prompts, et cetera, which are updated and so on. So look at that value. And it is across the stack, right from the hardware layer, as well as at other layers of the stack, at the model layer, at the agentic layer, as well as at the application layer as well. But it is about that driving value for the end customer. And one thing I would say is just due to the excitement in the AI space, and also with almost every CXO in any major company thinking about AI, the business opportunity is massive. So it's just about delivering that value.
And I also want to chime in to completely agree with the hardware and all that. I also want to say that it's also about the vertical integration. Yeah. People, because I'm from Neocloud, people usually think cloud computing is like commodity, which by and large is true, but also cloud computing is very challenging, very hard. You talk about the entire vertical stack from land, the power, the data center build out, the HPC architect, the orchestration, the software, and the finance. And the agent add this new layer, call it sandbox, call it harness, call it whatever, and system record. That's a new layer to be integrated into that vertical. Whoever can do a good job there is probably going to keep the margin.
Great. I wanted to talk a little bit, because we've got technology provider, we've got a guy bringing it all together, and then we've got two hyperscalers up here. I'm not talking, otherwise I have a third. With move to the agent-dominated area, are there things that you guys think a Neocloud is better suited for or has an advantage? And are there things that we think hyperscalers have advantages over in driving this new environment?
I can say for Neocloud.
Yeah.
It's a very tricky question. And I will say, yeah, we can begin from being a friendly peer to NVIDIA, and also, to be honest, be a friendly peer to also Google and AWS as well, because I do believe the market is big enough for multiple players, and as a Neocloud, we don't really need to invent everything by ourselves from scratch. We don't really need to do something completely from everybody else. Our play is being focused. Just like how Neocloud exists in the first place, the training inference workload does not fit into the general compute, cloud computing. So a lot of innovation in that space, GPUs, fast interconnection between chips, specialized storage and orchestration like KAs, those are created from these companies. What we added to that layer is to basically being focused. make those options the default and offer them to general public. I think that's how we build inference training cloud. We are going to do the same thing for the agent cloud.
Awesome.
To go back to your question of durable, I'm not sure the label Neocloud is a particularly durable label. So, like I would, the opportunity and the demand for compute is huge, and I think the hyperscalers have delivered a lot of that compute. I think there's a lot of space for some of the new insurgent Neoclouds to come in and do some interesting stuff, and they have. It's been very impressive, and I don't think I don't think we're going to have 80 Neoclouds out there, but I do think we're going to see some new emerging businesses that look a lot more like hyperscalers over time. Yeah. As a hyperscaler, or as an incumbent, I suppose, in this particular lens, you would just want to make sure that you weren't stuck on doing things in one way that might disadvantage you. And I think that's an important thing. If you have an established cloud business, that you're listening to your customers and what they need, and you're responding to those needs. And
Absolutely.
so those are always that's always the tension of big and small, and incumbent and insurgent. And
there are pros and cons on both sides. Awesome. I'm curious, we've got MCP right now as a protocol that's driving a fair amount of communications. What are we missing in agentic communication from a protocol perspective? What do we need to go build next to get these things far more interoperable than they are today? Trick question.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that needs to be worked out is this notion of this hierarchy of agents, where you have an agent and it spawns sub-agents and it spawns sub-agents, and maybe an agent spawns a team that works together. And I think there are kind of emerging, call it best practices in communication patterns, which imply like a scope to some kind of shared memory. So for example, if I have a team of agents, maybe they have some shared workspace, but I have another agent that doesn't have access to it. Mm-hmm. And so I think there are new standards to be developed to describe these kinds of scoped shared storage systems, and access and message passing between agents. And again, it's different from things we've built in the past, because things we've built in the past were either services or kind of human scale. And now, an agent can, in an ad hoc way, spawn 100,000 sub-agents, all of which need to communicate in some complicated pattern. And I think we're going to have to invent new standards for describing these sorts of things, enforcing them, implementing them efficiently. I think that's an emerging
I was slightly
area.
Yeah, I mean, along the same direction, I would say MCP provides you an interface for an agent to talk to a data source. Mm-hmm. Another thing that we need is for multiple agents to talk amongst themselves, and this is along the direction of this shared memory as well as even the communication. There, for example, there is something called agent-to-agent protocol, which is there, but it needs more adoption. Similarly, if you look on the commerce side, like we need these agents to start supporting payment/commerce. That will open up a huge new opportunity as well, and that's another place where like Google has something called ACP, or Agent Commerce Protocol, which is there. So these things need to be more absorbed into the ecosystem as we go along.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the standards front, there's different ways to think about standards. I think there are de facto standards, things that become quite efficient, and I think we'll definitely trend there as an industry. I would hope we resist standardizing where we don't need to. In the short term, there's places you need to standardize, sometimes for security, sometimes if you're a low-level wire protocol and you need a bunch of things to talk together. But AI is pretty elastic. And therefore, I think agents will find ways to collaborate that are efficient. We'll have to find tools and systems that will make them more efficient. But and I don't think you meant like NIST standards, but like hopefully we resist low-level standards where possible for a while. I think we want the innovation.
All right, we are nearing the end of our time, but I've got one question, sort of lightning round for each you to answer. A lot of builders here today, given it's an agentic conference, probably building somewhere in the agentic world. No doubt we're all going to have conversations with folks that are going to describe what they're building and, and things like that as the day goes on. As a VC, deal flow is great. What's one thing you hope someone's going to tell you they're building today that could be accretive, and what's one thing where you might suggest they consider different options? we can just go down. Let's do it.
Okay. I remember there's a saying said that give someone a fish, you feed them for a day. Teach someone how to fish, you feed them for life. I guess there are things like the model ways, the problem, the solution at your hand. Those are the fish, and don't hold on it. The value depreciate. Investing in how you get there, the means, the tools, the environment, and the system record. Those are the things has long-term value that compounds.
Yeah, I don't have some great insight because every single thing I can think of, there's a company doing today. Honestly, you know, vertical, horizontal.
There's 7 of them, John.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's great. I mean, agentic AI is clearly the new frontier of AI, and there's tremendous opportunity to improve and innovate. Everything from security to storage to vertically integrated domains to whatever. And I thought about this question, you know, when you prepped us a bit, and I can't think of a thing that someone should do that no one's doing.
I guess the editorial I'll add to that really quick, though, is if you are building something, assume that you're not the only person with this idea.
Yeah.
And what that means is you need to really understand who you're competing with and understand what color is the ocean and how are you going to differentiate when you go in. It's probably my meta take from your comment there.
Yeah.
I would say that I would tack on just to kind of go back to my, I think there's a risk in this frenetic times of looking at the progress we're making and thinking a problem is solved. And that can be, it's the other side of that coin, which is you can get too optimistic that an unsolved problem really isn't unsolved, but you can also fall into a trap of the way the models are evolving, the way some of the large labs are moving. You might be like, there's no space there at all, and resist that, because I think it is, what seems like a solved problem today will again be unsolved. I know that's important to you as a VC, but I deeply believe this as a technologist. This is very early days.
Thanks.
Yeah. Maybe one on the solution side that if you are building like final products or full-on agentic solutions, there might be a current business process which may have evolved over multiple years with different levels of pipeline. And many a times what people do is they sprinkle AI into each of those pieces of the pipeline. And the benefit that you can extract from AI becomes very diminished because you are thresholded by the limitations of each piece of the pipeline. I can use a trivial example of like if you are doing a number plate identification for parking or so on, right? Like you can do, take image, remove background, blah, 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 like all those different pieces, and you can try to sprinkle AI into each. Instead of that, see what the core capabilities of AI is and always be on the cutting edge because new capabilities don't be static, that is one. Look into the core capabilities of what AI can deliver, revisit the entire business process from the ground up and think about in an AI native way, if you had to build it, what would that be? And build that particular thing and hopefully that should deliver significant value.
Awesome. Thank you guys. With that concludes our panel. Thank you to our panelists. We're going to get up.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.